The following audio is from the Paradox Church in Fort Worth, Texas. To support the mission of the Paradox Church, text your amount to 84321 or visit us online at theparadoxchurch.com/give.
Okay, we good? We're good? My big question for us today is this. What do you do when the work you're called to do seems overwhelming? What do you do when it just seems like it's too much? What you feel like you're called to do, the walls that you're called to build back up, what does it look like when that work feels overwhelming? We've been in the book of Nehemiah these last few weeks, and Nehemiah has found out that the walls of Jerusalem have been torn down for over 100 years, and the people are in despair, and that he's being called to build these walls back up. All right? He's been broken over it. He can't shake it. He's been praying about it. He's been planning, and now he's going to have to do the work. And this is in the Bible because this is a big deal. This is not just any city. This is the city of Jerusalem, and it's not just any people that are in despair. It's the people of God. These are the people that are to worship God's name and cherish God's word and the promises of God. They come through them. The Messiah is going to come through this people, and he's going to rescue not just their nation, but all nations, not just their people, but all peoples. And so it's a big deal, and Nehemiah is a part of bringing this city and this people back to life. And then what we said is that the New Testament says that the church, that you and I, we are the new Jerusalem, that we are God's people now. And so we have the same responsibility. The worship of God is on our lips, and what's at stake in our city is the name of Jesus being famous and the word of God being cherished. And so there's much at stake in this kind of work. And what we said is, even as we're a city on a hill, a light that's meant to push back darkness, if we're honest, there are walls torn down in our lives as well. There's walls in our marriages, walls in our families, walls in the city, walls in this church that have been shattered by patterns of generational sin. They've been shattered by foolish ways. They've been patterned by just the brokenness of the world, and we're called to build these walls back up as well for the sake of God's name. And so what does it look like then if that work that we're called to do seems overwhelming? It seems overwhelming. And we've talked about this kind of vision that we might have for our life, the way in which we see the walls down around us, right? It's our life, it's our marriage, it's our family, it's our church, it's our city. And we think about what does this look like for us to build this back up, that God's name might continue to be cherished in this place. Like for example, maybe you're empty nesters now, or you're about to be, and you're thinking about, like, what is my vision for the back half of my life? What does marriage look like now that we're not tied to the kids? And what does ministry look like now that we have maybe some more time and some more energy towards that now, and not just our family? What does that look like? Maybe we're looking at generational sins and patterns. Right, we've inherited some bad habits and some bad things, and there's some addictions in our family tree, and divorce and anger and body image stuff, and we're broken over these things. And just like Nehemiah, we can't shake it. There's something that we have to do. We've started to pray, we've started to plan, but now it's time to get to work. What if it feels like too much? What if it feels overwhelming, the work that we're called to do? Right? What if we can't do it? What if we've tried before, right? We've actually tried some of these things before and it didn't go well. What about that? What if we don't think that we're the person for the job? Like, God, I think you found the wrong person, God. It's not me that is meant to break this thing off. It's not me that is meant to build this thing back up. You picked the wrong guy, God. What do we do when the work feels overwhelming? I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't know, like, one of my kids was like, rain makes me tired. And I was like, rain makes me depressed. I was like sad, right? So I was like, the world is broken. Things are just really hard. Iran is fighting Israel. Anxiety is like at an all-time high. I had some single folk email me about some unmet desires and some doubts that they're having. I had a conversation with a brother whose marriage is struggling, and like, man, we just talked about how hard it is to try to instill emotional intimacy in a marriage that hasn't seen it very much. My wife and I were navigating some conflict. We're human too. We're normal, normal marriages. You can imagine how hard it would be to be married to me. I'm like Shrek with a Bible verse. It's just like this ex-jock oaf with good theology that's, like a bull in a china. So it's just, we're navigating all of this, trying to figure all of this out, and things are really hard. What do we do when the work that we're called to do seems overwhelming? Now, I had her, she only read 6 verses? There's 32 verses in this chapter. It's the most boring chapter in the Bible, okay? So you're welcome that we didn't read all of them. I have to figure out how to teach it, but it's actually really great. So here's what we're gonna do. Just like last week, we had 9, where's Johnny at? Johnny was like, 9 points. You liked all 9 last week, right? I've got 9 more points for you this week, okay? 9 more points, 9 observations from chapter 3, the most boring chapter in the Bible, on what we do when the work seems overwhelming. Okay, so here's the first one. General observation. Here's number 1. We have to accept the scope of the work. Okay, the work seems overwhelming because it's huge, because it is big. Remember Nehemiah last week, he was investigating, he was looking at the wall, he was trying to take an inventory, like what's the problem here? And he looked at it, now he's got this plan, and now all these people are going to get to work, but first he had to accept the scope of the work. Jerusalem as a city was 2.5 miles in circumference. The wall would be 15 to 20 feet high and 3 to 4 feet wide. There would be 12 gates. Nehemiah, I think, just mentions 10, but there would be 12 gates that would have to be repaired as well. And it's been that way. It's been torn down for over 100 years. If it was easy, somebody else would have done it. If it was easy to do, if you see something broken in the city and you're like, I should do something about that, that seems overwhelming. It's because it is. Otherwise, somebody else would have done it. Right? If it's easy, somebody else would have done it. The work of restoration is a lot of work. The work of rebuilding and redemption and restoration, it takes a lot of work. Something had been torn down, something has been stolen from you, and you have to go build it back up or go get it back. And that's going to take a lot of work. This is the kind of kingdom work, Jesus stuff, that is hard work. Jesus himself said in John chapter 5, verse 17, my Father is working right now still, and so am I. We're working, right? Show them that text. Boom. We're working. There's a lot of work to do. This kingdom stuff, it's not easy. Right? We're gonna have to get to work. We're not gonna have a lot of time for Netflix. It's time to get after it. If you have a spouse that grew up in an abusive home, you probably should just say, you know what, this is gonna take us 10, 15 years to get to a place of freedom, to get to a place where there's been some healing. This is going to take a long time. You should just be ready for that. If you're just graduated and you have student loan debt and you're trying to figure that out, you should just know, like, this is going to take 90 years to pay off. This is going to take a long time. My grandkids will finally pay it off at some point. This is the financial legacy I'm leaving you. You're welcome, right? If your marriage has been struggling for a few years, it's probably not going to get better overnight. If you're trying to break off generational sins and patterns that took generations to come into place, it's going to take a lot of work in one generation to break it off. Right? That stuff takes time. It's going to feel overwhelming. You have to just accept the scope of the work. The work is overwhelming. Don't minimize it. You're going to need lots of prayer, a great plan, and a great God. And then you're going to have to get after it, okay? Two, you have to break the work up into manageable sections. You'll notice some of the language really all throughout chapter 3. They're at these different gates, these different parts of the wall, and then he'll say, and this family was next to them, and then next to them was this family. They built this part of the wall up, and then next to them was this family. And so Nehemiah has broken up the job into these manageable sections. You don't have to do all the work at once. Right? Whatever your vision is, break it down into manageable sections and just hit the first one first. Take the first one down first. Right? Don't try to do everything all at once. How can I accomplish just this one aspect? Is there an area of my life, one area that I could try to grow in this year? Then I can move on to those other things that's going to take, the work to build up the whole wall. For example, we have a vision to plant 200 churches in Fort Worth. We have 26 more years to get there. okay? So that's gonna take a long time. We're not gonna try to plant 200 next year. We're just gonna try to plant a couple of churches next year through Plant Fort Worth, our network that we started. Right? It's gonna take a little bit this year, a little bit next year, a little bit more, and then that law of multiplication jumps in, and all of a sudden all the churches start multiplying themselves, and we've got 200. We have a vision to send 30 missionaries to plant churches in unreached people groups by 2030. Okay, so we have 7 years to send 30 missionaries, and so in the next 2 years, we're going to plan and pray to send 10. We're gonna break it up into manageable sections. We're not gonna try to send 30 next year, but 10 over the next couple of years. We get 4 years. If you're a college student, we get 4 years with you. And so we have to break that up into manageable sections. Not what do we do in week 1 with you, but man, in 4 years, what do we want you to have known and experienced and walked through? What are we maybe nervous for you about? Like when you graduate, we're a little bit anxious for you. And so we want to prepare you for that moment. What is that? And how do we break that down into year 1, semester 1, year 2, semester 2, year 1? How do we do that so we can prepare you and disciple you in the way in which you need to be discipled over the course of 4 years? In our youth ministry, we have 7 years with you, right? 7 years. And so we have 7 years. What does that look? What do we want you to look like at age 18? How do we want you to be able to walk onto a college campus with a resilient faith and biblical literacy and a deep, true, genuine affections for Jesus? How do we then break that down year by year and walk you through a 7-year process so that you now are prepared to go? What does that look like? How old are your kids? Right? Subtract from 18, how old they are. That's how long you got. Okay, you got 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12. What do you want that to look like? And so what do you need to begin to work at right now? What walls do you need to begin to build up just now? Right? If you're leaving a spiritual legacy, that's going to be a lifetime of work, but you don't just do it all at once. You start today with some things, build those parts of the wall up, and then move on to other parts as you go. The job is overwhelming, but God is calling you to something today. He's not calling you to build the whole dang thing up right now, but one part of it today you can get to work on. 3, y'all with me? We're good? 3, I love this, verse 1. I love this language. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. I love that picture. They rose up. Here's number 3, you have to get going. Right? Number 3, you have to just start. When the work feels overwhelming, you just have to start. Just do something, just get up. I like this language because they had been sitting and doing nothing. That's why the wall is in the condition that it's in. That's why your marriage is in the condition that it's in. You've gotten a little bit complacent. You've been a little bit indifferent. You're a tad passive. You haven't done anything in a while. And so things now lie in ruins. The work, yeah, it seems like a big deal. It seems overwhelming. It's a pretty big job, but you have to just get up and get going. You have to just rise up. The first 2 chapters of Nehemiah have been actually pretty easy, right? The first chapter is like, things in our life, they're torn down. That's pretty bad. I can see that. I can see all the walls torn down around me. And maybe I've even broken over that. Chapter 2 of Nehemiah, pretty easy. I gotta pray and I gotta plan. I gotta plan and I gotta pray. I gotta do both. Okay, I can pray, God help me, plan, I can write some things down. That's actually pretty easy. Chapter 3, boring, but it's the most important chapter. It's actually doing the work. Right, the hard part is actually doing the work. You can have a great idea about how broken things are around you, and you can complain and criticize it, but the hard work is actually doing the actual work of building the walls back up. And so you have to just get up and get going. Here's why that's hard for some of us. I was just trying to think about this. Like, why is it hard for some people to just get up and start to do the work of restoration, redemption, rebuilding, whatever it might be? I think it's this. I think we're paralyzed not because the work is overwhelming. I don't think that's it, actually. I think we're paralyzed because there's a work underneath the work that is stifling us, okay? And so here's what I mean. There's something that's not like, I think I can do a better job at this husband thing. I think I could do a better job at this father thing. I think there's a spiritual legacy I wanna do, or there's a generational pattern I wanna break. And I think we can see the first step of that, and we could probably get going and we'd be okay, but we're afraid of something. There's a work underneath the work that we haven't done yet. Here's what I mean. You're afraid maybe to fail. That's the work underneath the work. You are still trying to prove yourself. You don't know what your identity is, and so you're trying to figure that out. Right? You're trying to find it in being a mom or being a pastor or leading a ministry, or you're trying to make a bunch of money, something, but you don't know who you are yet, and you haven't done that work in order to do the work to begin to rebuild or restore the walls broken around you. And so it's that kind of work, the work under the work, that feels overwhelming to you. And so what you need to do is actually just preach the gospel to yourself. You need to know that that's the kind of work, the work under the work, that Jesus worked for you. That's the work that God has already done. He's inviting you to the easy part, okay? It's not easy, it's hard, but you're working out of the work that Jesus has already done in your life, right? You need to know that Jesus has finished the work that he's doing in you. He's already taken care of those kinds of things, right? When the work feels overwhelming, remember you have nothing to prove now. Nothing. When the work feels overwhelming, you can remember that you are already accepted by God, that you have no debt to repay, you've been forgiven by God, and your identity is that you're a son or a daughter of the Most High God. So with great confidence, you can begin to move forward and actually do the hard work. Right? I love this language, Hebrews 10. I love the picture of Hebrews 10. Look at this. And every priest stands. Every priest stands daily. Why is he standing? Because there's work to do. He's still working, right? There's a lot of sacrifices, offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, because everybody keeps sinning. You sin, you got to go sacrifice something again, which can never take away sins. Verse 12, but when Christ had offered for all time one sacrifice for sins, what did he do? Sat down. Now the work's over. Jesus is like, I'm good. He sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from that time until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet. For by a single offering he has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified. Who's that? Yeah. Right? And so Jesus is perfecting us and has perfected us, and that kind of work beneath the work, he's finished that, and so our work then is out of his work. We do our kind of work outside of his work. And so we don't have to worry about if they don't respond well, or it doesn't go well, or maybe I fail at first, or maybe I try this thing and it's really hard, and it doesn't matter. We've already been accepted by God. The work beneath the work is over. Because Jesus sat down, you can get up and do the work. For the verse 1 again, we haven't gone out of verse 1. The leaders go first, okay? Leaders go first. Verse 1, Eliashib, I don't even know what I said. The high priest rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. So the high priest, the spiritual leaders, they're the ones that do this first. They get to work first. Leaders, by definition, go first. Husbands, you go first. Fathers, you go first. Pastors, you go first. Leaders, you go first. That's what leaders do. Right? God has given you a vision. You see the brokenness around you. You gather some people to, hey, this is what we're going to do. Right? The walls are broken. Let's build them back up. And then you go first. Right? Leaders go first. 5. I'm not going to tell you what 5 is yet. Look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. Verse 5, and next to them, the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles would not stoop to serve the Lord. Some people don't work, okay? Some people don't work. And Nehemiah makes it a point to let us know that these are the nobles. The nobles won't work. Right? You can almost picture what Nehemiah sees as he's writing down in his journal the work that has begun. And he sees these very important people, the nobles. He sees these very influential people. They're the ones that they own the land, and they have the money, and they're the ones that have the power, and they're the ones that refuse to stoop. They would not stoop. They wouldn't be humble. They wouldn't stoop down. They wouldn't get their hands dirty. They wouldn't do the work. Right? And you can imagine, it's like, well, because we're a very important family and we have a very important last name. And we wear suits. We're wearing suits, and you can't, scrub toilets wearing a suit. You can't, put mortar on brick wearing a suit. It gets the suit dirty. It could ruin the suit. And we're just very important, and we're not able to do this kind of work, and so we're not going to stoop to do this kind of work. We're too important for that. And it's frustrating because this seems like it's typically the case, right? The Apostle Paul, he tells Timothy, a young pastor, he says, here's how to address the nobles in your church. He says, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, right? not to be arrogant, not to be prideful, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, and to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation, so we can build up this wall for the future, so that they may take hold of what is truly life. So if you're a noble, be rich in good works, be generous with what you have, be ready to share so that you can grab a hold of what is truly life. Kingdom stuff, Jesus stuff, church stuff, building walls back up stuff. That's the kind of stuff that is truly life. And if you're wondering what that looks like, what does it look like to use your wealth or use your influence or use your power for that kind of stuff? It looks like stooping. It looks like you getting your hands dirty. It looks like you actually stepping down a level, looking like Jesus and helping with the work. It looks like where you serve so much, your hands are getting dirty. And it's taking away time from the really, really important work that you typically do. It looks like where you give so much, it actually takes you down a financial level. It actually financially hurts. It's those kind of things where you stoop down and help with the work. But that's actually not my point. Here's my point. Look at the guys next to him. The Tekoites, they repaired next to the nobles who wouldn't. Here's point number 5. Don't get distracted or derailed by those who refuse to work. See, you're gonna be tempted when the work feels overwhelming to look around you and be like, why aren't you working? Don't be distracted or derailed by those who don't do the work. These guys are my heroes, man. They're getting after it. They don't get caught up in, the nobles aren't working. They keep working. In fact, when they're done, verse 27, they go work on another part of the wall. They're the only ones that work on 2 parts of the wall. They had to do this part of the wall by themselves because the nobles wouldn't work. They got it done so early, they went and helped another wall. Yeah, their attitude isn't, these people aren't working, so then I'm not gonna work. Their attitude is, the goal is to rebuild this wall. We're gonna rebuild this dang wall. And they get after it, right? Number 6, verse 6. Look at verse 6. We come to the gate of Yeshana. This is my favorite gate. This is the old gate, okay? In the old gate, you have this diverse group of people. Like verse 8, you have goldsmiths and perfumers. In verse 9, you have city officials, city rulers. You have this diverse group working together at the gate. Right? When the work feels overwhelming, just recognize you need a diverse group of people working together on the work. I love this gate. I can just kind of picture this gate, this area of the city where they're all working together, and these like 3 groups of people working, but then arguing over what kind of music they should listen to. It's like the perfumers, they have the new Taylor Swift going, and I just imagine, and then the goldsmiths, they're like Texas country all the way, and the city officials, they're a little older, they don't mind Texas country, but they would prefer George Strait, and there's like this battle over the iPod, whatever, and iPods, they didn't even have that, no, and so they're working, but they're working together. They're different, but they have unity. Right, there's a diversity that you need, where you have different personalities and different backgrounds, people with different stories and different gifts that you bring to the table. It's what I love about the church. In the church, that's what you have. Right? In the church, you have that kind of diversity. And you need to recognize sometimes that is actually a really good thing. Like, it's a good thing your spouse thinks differently than you do. and sees things differently than you do and has different gifts than you, because then together you can build this new family and leave this spiritual legacy. Your friends are going to be different. There's going to have different, this church is going to be different. In fact, we need different churches in this city playing different roles to accomplish all that we would want for Jesus in the city of Fort Worth. We can't just have one church that's just like us. We have to have all kinds of different churches, right? We need that kind of thing. So for example, Plant Fort Worth, this network of churches that we started, it's a collaboration of Presbyterian churches and charismatic churches and Bible churches, and it's led by white people and black people and brown people, and with this collaboration of churches in the city that say, let's multiply more churches, let's start more churches so that we can cover the whole city with the glory and grace of Jesus. Our mission statement is just that, to saturate Fort Worth, the whole city, just dripping with the glory and grace of Jesus. And if we're to do that, we need to be diverse, right? We'll need artists and entrepreneurs and engineers and teachers and businessmen and administrators and lawyers and doctors and plumbers in the city, armed with the gospel, going forth, making much of Jesus. We would need to be black and brown and white and young and old and poor and rich if we're going to reach the whole city. You need a diverse group of people to reach the whole city. It's a big wall. It's a big thing we got to build up here. Now, if you have diversity, that's great, but you also need unity. Otherwise, you're not going to get any work done. There has to be a unity. Right? We have to all be achieving the same thing, working towards the same thing. It doesn't matter how talented people are. It doesn't matter how great of a plan you might have. You have to have the same mission and objective. Right? You can imagine the perfumers looking down the street at the goldsmiths and seeing them all work on the same wall. They dress a little bit differently. Their music is kind of weird, but they're encouraged because we're all building the same thing. You have to have diversity and unity in a church, diversity and unity in your marriage, diversity and unity in your ministry. You have to have both. And so we have to have theological unity. Are we talking about the same God? Are we preaching the same gospel? Are we reading the same word? Are we interpreting that word in the same way? All right, we have to have theological unity. We have to have a unity of vision. Are we trying to accomplish the same thing? We have to have unity of culture. Meaning, are we going to accomplish this thing in the same way? Are we going to go about this in the same way? Will we have the same values in our family? Will we have the same values as we start this church? Will we have the same values as we start this ministry? We have to have relational unity. We have to have trust. Can we work together? All right, we're different. That's great. It's a good thing we're different, but we have to have relational trust and unity so we can work together. As well, you'll notice that everyone is working in teams. They're all working together. They don't work by themselves. They work in teams. That's the kind of unity you need to have. The work's going to feel really overwhelming if you're always by yourself. Some of you are trying to do things by yourself, and that's why it feels overwhelming. We have to work in teams. Here's how freakish I am. I shouldn't worry about these things, but I worry about these things. I can't, how do I say this? This is going to seem so dumb when I say it. This is just, we need more people on our parking team, because if I see another parking team member out there by themselves in either 99,000 degrees or 40 degrees with the wind blowing at 100 miles an hour, I'm going to freak out. Because we don't do that. I don't want the first thing that people to experience at this church is one person going like this. Like we just kind of do things all on our own here. No, we do things in teams, and we're able to talk to each other while we're out there freezing our butt off, or baking in the sun, and we get to engage in community and not conflict. Hopefully you're not fighting, but just you're together. And we're working together. Everything we do should be together. We lead together. We serve together. We're on teams together. We do these things together. We're a team. Right? We have to work in teams. In fact, in verse 12, we even see families working together. Right? Next to him is Shalom, the son of Lashash, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem. He and his daughters. He's working with his girls. I love that. You work with your girls up in the nursery and the kids ministry. You could set up, tear down. You could do all, there's all kinds of stuff we could do together, and we could do it as a family even. Right? So there's this unity and this diversity in the work, and it helps the work to be more manageable. 7, we're almost done. 7. So some work, verse 14, some work is less desirable than other work, okay? I don't know if you caught it, but Machlah, the son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakaram, if you just say it fast and with confidence, nobody knows that you have no idea what you're talking about. They just say it out loud. They're not even hiding anything. They repaired the what? The dung gate. It's literally called the dung gate, right? They went on LinkedIn and they're like, dung gate, interesting. We should work there. Do you guys know what the dung gate is? It's where they took the trash out and other things. We call it the nursery, okay? It's working in the nursery. Yeah, you work in the nursery? It's the dung gate. Yeah, it doesn't smell. Y'all are awing? You can't awe diapers. It's diapers. It's the dung gate. Yeah, some work is less desirable than other work, but that work still has to be done. Somebody has to do that work. It's a dung job. Somebody has to do it. Okay? Somebody's got to do it. You'll get that on the way home. Number eight. God works through his people. Okay? Another observation. God works through people. God works through people. Here's what I mean. Nehemiah, all of chapter 3 is just a bunch of names. He knows their names, we don't. We can kind of try to pronounce them, but we don't know anything about them, right? I was studying, it's how do I, Hechabub? I can't find anything about Hechabub. He's the only time he's mentioned in the Bible. We know nothing about any of these people. They are nobodies, okay? And Nehemiah writes down their names. He knows who they are. So he's got this administrative process. He has these systems in place. Why? Because he cares for people. Systems and processes are in place so you can care for a lot of people. It's really important. And so he's writing these people down, and they're nobodies. There's nothing about them that we know about. And what's great about that is that you have these normal people working together, and they can do a great work and leave a great legacy. Pastor Matt Shelton, he was talking to me about our choir. When you have a choir, and our choir is wonderful and they're very talented, but the great thing about a choir is you can get a bunch of people that don't sing very good at all and it'll sound good together. In the same way, you can get a bunch of normal people working on a great mission and they can do a great work and leave a lasting legacy. These are ordinary, normal people, just like you and I. We will never know anything about them because God chooses to work through people. Great work through normal people. You probably don't know the name of your great-grandfather, but you live in his legacy. Good or bad? Good or bad, no name great-grandfather, and you live in his legacy. I don't know if you've heard of the story of John Tyler, our 10th president. John Tyler was the 10th president. He was named president in April 4th, 1841, probably best known for the annexation of Texas. But he was our 10th president. He has a grandson that is living today. Our 10th president, installed as president in 1841, has a grandson living today. Just kind of think about history, just squeezing together how short that is, how small that makes everything. He's got a grandson, Harrison Tyler, who's 95 years old. This is possible because he had a son. John Tyler had a son at 63. That son, Harrison Tyler's dad, had him at 75. Yeah. John Tyler, the president, he was born a few weeks after George Washington's State of the Union address and 9 months into the French Revolution. And he has a grandson that's alive right now who lives in a world with YouTube and AI and self-driving cars. And so you just think about your legacy and the kind of thing that we're trying to build in our homes, in this church, and in this city. And you think about just how quickly a legacy is built and how quickly a legacy is shattered. And you think about the work that we do today is the world that our kids get to live in tomorrow, and it'll happen like that. And not too long from now, you'll have a great-great-grandson. They won't know your name at all, but they'll be living in a world with generational patterns, values, work that you've done. When the work feels overwhelming, remember that it's worth it. The past is closer than we think. The future will be here before you know it. Legacy matters. What you give your life to is the life that your children will inherit. The walls that you let stay torn down are the walls that your kids and grandkids will have to build back up themselves. Here's the good news. God, he accomplishes his work through people. So God could fix your marriage just like this. God could fix this church just like this. God could just zap the city and his name would be famous all throughout the city, and every people, whatever color they are, whatever place, everyone would worship his name. In fact, one day that will be true. One day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He could, like this, fix every wall and every problem, but he chooses to work through people. The work is overwhelming, but you have to remember that God is doing a great work in you. By you doing this great work, God is doing a great work in you. You have a vision to build back up some walls that have been torn down in your life or in the life around you, but God also has a vision, and it's you being built up. That Romans 8:29, you were predestined to be conformed into the image of the Son. That God has a vision for you, and the vision is this: you will look like Jesus. You'll be strong like Jesus. You'll be bold in the face of criticism like Jesus. You'll be courageous when it's hard like Jesus. You'll be kind when people revile you like Jesus. You'll be like Jesus. He's making you like Jesus. He's building you up, and he's using the work that he calls you to. He's using your hard marriage right now to make you like Jesus. He's using your difficult life right now to make you look more and more like Jesus. He's using the ministry that he's called you to make you look more like Jesus. Your empty nester years is so that you would look more like Jesus, because he's not done. He's doing that work in you that he finished on the cross. That work, he's perfecting you in all of that now. So when the work is overwhelming, we remember but Jesus is still doing a good work in us. And then finally, be encouraged. We can do this kind of work. We can stoop down, get our hands dirty, because Jesus stooped down to save us. I love the language of the nobles in verse 5. Their nobles would not stoop down to serve their Lord, because the gospel is the complete opposite truth. Their Lord stooped down to serve them. If you wonder why we named the church the Paradox, it's that. Jesus of highest nobility, of ultimate influence and wealth, stoops down, and he comes not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. The language of stooping down, it reminded me of Philippians 2, a similar language that Paul uses for Jesus. Have this mind among yourselves. I want you to have this attitude that we learned from Jesus, he says, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. But he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself. He stooped down by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. So the work is overwhelming, but the work beneath the work he's taken care of. And he empowers us to do this kind of hard work through his example and by his Spirit. He's saying, I've stooped down, you can stoop down. I've gotten my hands dirty, you can get your hands dirty. I've served you, you can serve her. You can serve them. And so we work out of the freedom of the work that Jesus has already done in us, and we are empowered to do that kind of work. Right? It's Ephesians 2. We've not been saved by good works, but we've been saved by grace to do good works. And so we operate out of the gospel of Jesus, who's already done this kind of work. Or take Isaiah 58. What a great promise. What a great promise this is. And the Lord will guide you continually. You will not be alone in this work. And he will satisfy your desire in the scorched places. When it's scorched earth at home, when the walls have been torn down, he will satisfy you and make your bones strong. You shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail, and your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You will leave a great spiritual legacy. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. This is a promise to you. If there's anything that Nehemiah is, it's a reminder that God keeps his promises. And so I wonder, and here's just how I'll close. I wonder what Nehemiah would see, just like he toured Jerusalem, what he would see if he toured Fort Worth. If Nehemiah just kind of walked around and took a look at our homes, and our marriages, and our lives, and our ministry, and our church, and our city, what kind of work would he see? What kind of names would he write down? Would he write down your name? What kind of work would be happening? Kingdom work, real work, that kind of work that is truly life, like real, like Jesus stuff. What would he see? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to just kind of get before the Lord right now, personally, just you and the Lord. First thing I want you to do is I want you to confess that you've just felt overwhelmed. Just got to feel overwhelmed by the work. It feels too hard. It feels too much. Who am I to do this kind of work? Who am I to... You picked the wrong guy, God. It feels too much. And I just want you to hear him say Isaiah 58 over you. I want you to hear Isaiah 58 spoken to you in your sense of overwhelm. Here's how I think God might respond. He might say, I will guide you continually. I've not asked you to do this alone. I will satisfy your desire in the scorched places. I will make your bones strong. You shall be like a watered garden. Your waters will not fail. Your ancient ruins will be rebuilt. Have confidence. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You will be called the repairer of the breach. You will be called the restorer of streets to dwell in. Generational sins and patterns, they can stop with you. A spiritual legacy can start with you. A better city can be given to your kids. A better church can be given to your grandkids. The Word of God can continue to be cherished in this place. And nobody might ever know your name. Even your great-grandkids may never know your name, but I have written your name in my book. And then just ask him what to do today. You don't have to build the whole dang thing today. God, what do I do right now? I have so much hope for you. We have so much confidence in the work that God has called us to. Yeah. Amen.